All right. Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about your experience. You were born with tricuspid atresia, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you are also a mom.
Yes.
Okay. So that is a topic that a lot of people who have tricuspid atresia are concerned about in their lifetime that,
hmm
they're not going to have the ability to be a mom, or there's something that their doctor has mentioned that they're like, no, we don't think that that's a good idea. Um,
Yeah.
so, my first question for you is, what was your initial thoughts about having children? Because you grew up with this heart condition, and so
Mhm.
where were your thoughts when you were younger?
Yeah. So when I was a lot younger, well, not a lot younger, but younger, like in my early teens, I actually asked to have my tubes tied at like 14 because they had told me, hey, like, if you get pregnant, this is going to be a battle. And like, it's what it seemed to me was like my future husband or whoever would be put in the situation to decide whether it was me or the baby. And I never wanted to put anyone in that situation, especially somebody I loved. So I was like, let's just do this. And they were like, no. Kind of thought for a really long time that I'd never be able to have kids. I had an IUD for 10 years. And then I got a change in my cardio team because my cardiologist that I'd had since the day I was born retired. And I just happened to ask because I now had a female cardiologist. And I was like, hey, so kids. And she was like, so it's risky. Like, we're not going to say it's not, but it's possible. And I was like, okay. So it kind of stuck in my head, but I was still like, I don't know. It was a big decision, but then I had been doing so well heart wise that I felt confident in my body to take that step.
So it was really, you were concerned about it,
Mhm.
and you thought, it's probably something I'm going to be able to do. So you wanted your tubes tied at 14.
Yeah.
And then, so they told you no. You met somebody later on.
Yeah.
And what was his reaction to all of this? Did he have the reaction that you were afraid of?
No, okay, so my husband is amazing in a lot of ways, but he was in the military and he was actually military medicine. So super well versed in things. And so he immediately was like, okay, well, if we can't have kids like the traditional way, we'll adopt, we'll do a surrogate, because I wanted to have kids. It wasn't that I didn't want kids, it was just I didn't think I would be able to have them. And he's like, we'll find a way. And then when the possibility came up that, like, hey, I could actually be pregnant, I could actually like have a baby, I was like, oh, okay. So what do you think about this? And he was like, all right. And we weighed the risk really heavily, and he decided we would do like one biological, see how that went, and then go from there. It ended up being two biological because our first was stillborn, and we were both like, okay, well, cardiac wise, I did amazing. Like, my cardiologist was like, okay, fine. So we're like, okay, we're gonna one more time, and that's it, we're done. And so that's how my daughter came to be. So but yeah, and we are like very done now. Like, we're like, okay, we're gonna wait like at least 5 years before we even look into like adoption or anything.
Right.
Just because it's been kind of a roller coaster of a year and a half, a year, with our son being stillborn and then our daughter being born at 28 weeks.
Mhm.
So it's been a lot, and we're like, okay, we're just gonna focus on her and focus on other parts of life. But yeah, he did get. I will say, after I had my daughter, he was like, okay, we're really done. Like, he's like, I don't care what you say, we're never doing this again, because her delivery was so rough, and we can get into that later. But he was like, nope, never doing it again.
Okay. So first I want to touch upon your first baby and
Mhm.
how, because that is a difficult thing to go through. And it's also one of the things that I find a lot of parents and medical members might hush hush. So
Mhm.
what was your experience with having a stillborn child?
Yeah, and I definitely agree, especially with stillborn, it is very hush hush. And it shouldn't be, because it's, you need to know people have gone through that when you're going through it. But so what happened was I had a placental abruption. So my placenta detached from the uterine wall and just stopped working completely. We don't know why, it just happened. And he was already small, which is a common thing for children of people with a Fontan. It's common that the baby measures small. He was already small, so he didn't have a lot of reserve. Um, there's gonna be somebody walking behind me, just so you know. And he passed like still in me. And how we found out was I woke up in the middle of the night and my water had broke, but it was a very small break. It wasn't like the gush of fluid. It was just like this trickle. And so I told my husband, I was like, we need to go to the hospital. And we went, and they couldn't find him on the monitor, took me into an OR, couldn't find him, found him on ultrasound, and, found out he had passed. And they were like, okay, we're just going to have you go through labor. And like, as much as that sucks. And I was in labor for total like 7.5 hours. And he was born October 13th of last year. And so, it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've done in my life. And obviously I've gone through a lot with my heart, but it's scary. I will say this, but I will say that people who work in labor and delivery are so kind and so loving. Like, I never felt alone. I never felt like I had done something wrong. They made it very clear that this was a freak medical thing. It wasn't, I did something, I ate something, I slept wrong. And it had nothing to do with my heart. Um, I am on Lovenox injections. And I asked, was like my blood too thin to maintain, and they were like, nope, it has nothing to do with that. It literally is just a freak thing. So yeah, that's that's what happened. And it is something that now I'm very adamant with like people I know, like, hey, make sure like when they're doing ultrasounds and stuff, they're looking at your placenta. Because sometimes there are signs that's gonna happen.
Sure. What kind of, I just want to mention for everybody that you are in a hospital right now. So you've got some
Yes,
background noise and a very interesting background.
yes, this is a hospital waiting room. I don't know, it might look kind of familiar to some
Yeah.
people. That looks like a hospital. Yep, that's where I'm at. Yeah, and I'm my daughter's in the NICU, so
That's where you're at right now.
that's where I'm at.
Could you explain why your daughter's in the NICU and maybe a little bit about your journey with having being pregnant with her?
Yeah. So when I got pregnant with her 6 months after we lost our son, and had a pretty rough pregnancy. I had subcutaneous hematomas, where there's like small bleeds, and we found out I had multiple ones, and I only bled externally for one of them, so we didn't know until a sporadic one was caught on ultrasound. My placenta, again, sucked.
Yeah.
There's there's no two ways about it. And she only had two vessels in her umbilical cord instead of three. So because of all of those things and me being a Fontaner, she was really small. Um, and so I started to have symptoms like I had had kind of a couple days before my abruption with my son. And I had said from the gate, if I had any of those symptoms, I was going to the hospital and I wasn't leaving until she was born. And so I went to the hospital. They're like, no, you're really, really fine. Like they showed me so many things like that I felt comfortable leaving. Got halfway home. For reference, I do live 2 hours from the hospital that I gave birth at both times, because the hospitals closer to me cannot handle my cardiac history while being in labor and delivery. So I was halfway home, went to the bathroom, noticed some bleeding, turned right around and came right back. And they were like, nope, she's fine. It's most likely because you had a pelvic exam, but we'll admit you because like clearly your anxiety is now full blown.
Right.
Um,
And also it's at this point the patient is really concerned. And when you're
yeah,
a concerned patient and you're like, hey, I just peed blood, like you
yeah,
like there should be something that they do for you to help you with that, because
yeah,
your concern shouldn't be taken lightly at that point.
yeah. And it definitely wasn't. They were like, this is most likely the cause, but we're still going to admit you. We're still going to monitor you. Because at that point, they had already said I would be coming down here for non-stress tests, where they put the baby on the monitor for 20 minutes, see how they're moving, see how their heart rate is, and see if you're having any contractions. I was going to do that twice a week. So they're like, you were already going to come down twice a week. We may as well just admit you. So they admitted me. I was in the hospital for a week, and then my water broke, and like broke. And so I was like, called the nurse. Nurse came in, took me down to labor and delivery. I was not in labor. And so they were monitoring me for 48 hours. And at the very tail end of that, I had a massive panic attack, which was a lot of the reason I was admitted. Because my daughter is a mover and she decided to hide from the monitor. So they couldn't find her heartbeat. And one wrong word was said, and it was 2 in the morning, and yeah. So the next morning, the doctors came in. They're like, hey, we don't know, kind of what's like, we know you're not going into labor. You can have it's called a broken bag. You can have a broken bag for a while and it'd be fine. She's replacing her amniotic fluid fine. We would just continue to monitor you. But given your anxiety, given the fact that, there's a really high possibility of an emergent delivery, and with you, with heart patients, we can't have, or what I've been told is we can't have a normal epidural where you also get a spinal injection. You have to get a slow epidural. So it takes about 40 minutes for the epidural to actually be fully effective. And because of that, that's 40 minutes of time that you don't have, essentially. So they asked me, hey, how do you feel about her being born today? I was exactly 28 weeks. And they're like, we'll just do a scheduled C-section today. You're stable, she's stable. It's kind of a great time. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. And that was exactly a month ago today. And so went in, I had the C-section. She came out kicking and screaming, and they had the NICU team there. So they assessed her. She was breathing on her own. So she's just needed CPAP support to help keep her lungs open, as opposed to needing to be intubated or anything. So they took her to the NICU, took me to recovery. In recovery, I hemorrhaged. So I hemorrhaged pretty hard, and then they were like, okay, we'll monitor it overnight because we don't want, like, we were just in there. We don't want to go in again. And the C-section went perfectly. Like, everything went perfectly. So the next morning, they're like, nope, you're still bleeding a lot. You're losing too much blood. We're going to take you in for a D&C. And that could lead to a partial hysterectomy. because we think that your uterus might not be contracting down as it should. It's either that or you have an abnormal venous malformation, which is basically it. They think I had one after my son too. It's where the veins and stuff in your uterus don't heal back properly, and it causes a lot of bleeding. So they go in and put like a balloon in it to block off that bleeding. So they're like, one of those two things is going to happen. And I was like, okay. So they took me into the OR again. I had another epidural, and they did the DNC. Found out it was just placenta that hadn't fully passed out. And I was like, of course, I would completely lose it with the first one. I had a partial abruption with my daughter, and then now there's part of it that's just like, no, I'm staying, like I'm locked in.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I had that done. The bleeding substantially subsided. And I was in CCU for 2 more days. Had a couple episodes where I passed out or kind of zoned out a little too hard because of blood loss, but never needed a transfusion. Now I'm fine. I'm still like a little weak because I'm still working on regaining all the blood I lost. They said that could take at least a couple months. I lost between 30 and 50% of my blood volume. So yeah, so they're like, it could take a couple months, just take it easy. So makes it easy to spend time with her in the NICU. And she is just working on growing and learning to do all of the things. We've taken her breathing support down, so she is gonna start working towards room air, but she is great, like honestly. And that's the biggest thing I want to like impart on people is, even if with Fontan, the risk of premature birth is higher from what I understand, and they can still be okay even almost 3 months premature. My pregnancies, all the issues were obstetric, nothing cardiac. I saw my cardiologist a week after I had my daughter, and she was like, I know it's hard to believe, but cardiac wise, you did fantastic. And I was like, okay. Are you sure? Because I feel like I might not have. And she's like, no, like her heart was solid. My echoes have been the same from before I ever got pregnant through both pregnancies. So yeah.
So did anything change heart-wise after the pregnancies? Did they find anything?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My cardiologist has said that she's gonna follow me a little closer now, because they have had Fontan deliveries at this hospital. Sometimes it's like in the next 5 years, they start to see more cardiac complications. But as of right now, I am basically at my baseline. My sats have been, pretty solid. They did take a hit. I was normally around 94. Now I'm more around 92.
Okay.
But it's not anything they're like, they want to go in and do anything
Okay.
about. They don't want to do a cath or anything. They're like, it's probably just your body recovering. So
and the amount of blood loss that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, we'll let you like fully recover for a while. And also, being pregnant giving birth twice in a year is a lot on anybody's body. Even a perfectly healthy woman is gonna have some issues with that. So they kind of want to take a step back and just see how I do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm so happy to hear that, I mean, you went through a major, both of those pregnancies in it was like a year and a half, right? Roughly?
Yeah, so yeah, it was like a year and a half of being pregnant essentially. And they were born like a little over 11 months apart.
Right. So you're in the NICU right now, and how is she doing? She's doing all right?
Yeah, she's great. She's doing great. She is honestly like super active. Like she kicks around, she takes her monitors or leads off, and messes with things, you know. Um, so yeah, she's doing really good. A lot of why she's here is because she needs to gain weight and grow. She was born 1 pound 10 ounces and 13 inches long. So she's now 2 pounds 4 ounces. So yeah, so she's doing really, really good. Um, it's just gonna be kind of a long road of waiting for her to grow. They normally leave kind of around their due date. So hers was in December, or is in December. So she probably around December is when we can expect to take her home, as long as no other issues arise. But she does have, um, so I have tricuspid atresia. She doesn't have any like congenital heart defect like we would normally think of, but she does have two superior vena cava. Yeah. And I was like, what is this? Like, oh, mom forgot to grow a part, so I'm gonna grow it for like an extra part. um, but there's no intervention for that. It's just something like we'll take her to a cardiology appointment a few months after we're discharged, but I guess it's like 0.3% of the population just kind of walks around with two superior vena cava.
That's so interesting because a patient who like a baby that might not have a mom who has a CHD or something along those lines, they may never have caught that.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
interesting. What's the like how so there's two separate
Mm-hmm.
and then they connect, or is it like
No, they're completely separate. So one goes into her right atrium and one goes into her left atrium. So they're fully separate from each other. They both work fully, like they're both fully functional. How we found out was they were placing a central line for her, which is like a normal thing they do with preemies in the first few days, week, so they can get some antibiotics. And because she wasn't able to eat yet, so she could get, TPN and all those things. And they were placing it and they were like, this is going weird. Like, this is taking a path like it should take on the opposite side. And so they were like, and she has a slight murmur. So let's just order an echo. Mom has a cardiac history anyway, so we'll get an echo. And the echo came back and they were like, yeah, so she has two superior vena cava. She also has a small PDA and ASD. They expect both of those will close on their own. They're super, super small. They're not even intervening with medication. So, but yeah, her vena cava, she's just always going to have two. Um, it's so weird.
that is so interesting. I'm glad that that's the only thing they're finding.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. She just, and I'm like, as somebody with a cardiac history and, all the things that we all know and we all are so familiar with, it's like, I was like, okay, so like, how often will she have to see a cardiologist? Like, I was preparing my mind for like, okay, we're gonna have to like every 6 months be down here for a cardiology appointment. Is she gonna have to have cath? And they're like, no, like cardiology is gonna follow up to see if those two holes closed, but the vena cava, she's fine. Like she'll be fine. She might just have a slight murmur because it obviously her blood flow is a little different. But I've already talked to her pediatrician, who she'll have back home, and her pediatrician's like, okay, like let me research this and get familiar with it because super rare, but like, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you're going to have a pediatrician closer to you that is like,
Mm,
yeah, I'm going to do my part and do some research, because I know some doctors will be like, oh, I have no idea anything about that. You got to switch doctors. So that's
yeah,
good that this pediatrician is like, nope, I'm going to do my research and like
yeah.
the care you need. That's good. Well, awesome. My last question for you is, would you like to share any messages for anybody who has TA or a existing heart condition and they're thinking about being pregnant, and for any parents out there that might have gone through a similar situation with you with a stillborn baby.
Yeah, so for anyone who has TA, my biggest thing is talk to your doctors, get set up with a good team, like a cardiology team that works with a maternal fetal medicine team, because they're going to need to talk to each other constantly and have the respect for each other that, like, sometimes what obstetrics thinks is normal, cardiac is going to be like, no, 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 we're not allowing that. With people who have had a stillborn, obviously my heart goes out to them. I've been there and I'm still there. It's still hard every day, but just find your way and find your normal and find what works for your family, and don't let anybody else tell you how you're allowed to grieve or how you're allowed to honor your child. For us, we're very open about our son, but we don't share any pictures of him, and we don't really talk about him a lot on social media. We're very private about him. Yeah, it's whatever works for you, and find a community. I've met a lot of really great people, sadly, who are a part of this club, and it sucks, but having the people to talk to, especially if you decide to go on to have more kids, having people who have been through that, who understand, like, you have a weird pang in your side and you're like freaking out, and having other women who are like, no, 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 like, it's fine, I know you're scared, I know I've been there. It's such a relief to hear it from somebody else who has walked that walk.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I know a lot of the information that you gave us is very personal. So thank you again. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day in the hospital with your daughter to just chat with me.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. She sleeps a lot, so she's great. She's sleeping, and well, she's probably awake now because she's getting ready to eat. So I'm about to head back in there for
Okay,
that.
yeah, I'll let you go. I'll let you go hang out with her. And thank you so much again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.